Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Everyday Heroes podcast. Today, I have Calli. She's an American. She is coming all the way over from the States to chat to us about home OT strategies. She is the owner of Confident Kids Therapy, and she's basically dedicated her world into ensuring that children, I'm just going to go live, if children's lives, especially autistic children's, are impacted through OT, that they are taken care of, that they are cared for and having their needs met where they are, because so often sometimes those needs aren't always met, and sometimes as parents we don't always have the education around what to do with our autistic child. What do they need? How do they need to be able to go forward? There are so many questions that come up when you're a parent of an autistic child, and it can be overwhelming and it can be scary. But I want to introduce Calli because I think she is a breath of fresh air. I think that she will have so many strategies and tips on home OT. And yeah, let's take it away. Welcome, Calli.
Well, I appreciate that introduction. That was so nice.
Oh, you're so welcome. You are so welcome. So before we go on, Calli, can you just give the listeners a little bit of an overview of your career and more so around OT?
Yeah, so I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, so that means I've only really worked with kids. I've been an occupational therapist for about 7 years, and I've owned my business for about three and a half. And
Mhm.
my big focus for my business was to be able to go into the kids' homes, to be able to talk with the families, to be really family centered in my practice. Because when I was in outpatient pediatric therapy, it was like, here's the child, drop them off, and then I had like 2 minutes to talk to the family. And that just like
Yeah.
didn't sit well with me. And I was just like, there's no carryover. Kids were in therapy for a really long time. And
Mhm.
I just felt like there was a better way, a better quality of therapy I could provide. So that's why I started my business. And now I'm kind of diving into more online resources to help educate others far beyond just therapy.
Yeah, right. Where with your audio, it seems to be coming in and out a little bit. Are the speakers covered or anything like that?
No, but I do hear that, so I don't know what is going on. Is
That's
that better?
okay. That's right. No, that sounds great.
Okay.
So for just to get clarification, when we say a home OT, we are talking about an occupational therapist coming to the home to provide the service of occupational therapy for an autistic child. Is that right?
Mhm. Yep.
Yep. Okay, great. Because sometimes that's not a term that I like. Obviously, it makes sense, but just in case anyone is listening that they don't quite understand. So what does it look like to have therapy in the home?
Yeah, so I usually go in, for, like, 45 to 60 minutes, and
Mhm.
I provide very, like, play-based, very movement-based therapy. It really just depends on what the goals are for the kid, what we kinda
Yeah.
do. A lot of it is around fine motor development and sensory processing,
Mhm.
which is why I include a lot of that movement to help with the sensory processing and regulation piece of it. 'Cause
Yes.
I feel like if we're not regulated, if we're kind of in an off state, then we're not gonna get much skilled fine motor stuff done. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, in an instance that you walk into a session and a child is dysregulated, what are you doing? Like, what's your first go to? Or are you really just looking at the child's interest and going with something like that? Or is there something specific?
I'm really following their lead, meeting them where they're at. If they're in a heightened state, if they're sensory seeking, I usually
Hmm.
have kind of an idea of their sensory profile before going in, if we did
Yeah.
an evaluation, and then making sure I'm meeting those needs. So if they have a higher threshold, where they're needing a little bit more of that movement, then I provide an intense kind of I don't provide it, but I, like, kind of encourage them
Yeah.
to do an activity that I feel like that would meet those needs, and then we
Yeah.
kind of go from there.
Yeah, right. Got you. It's so important about that regulation piece because, I often see it with my son, right? Especially with homeschooling. If he's dysregulated, that idea of doing homeschooling it's
Yeah,
not going to happen. And
yeah,
that is the case for whatever they're learning, right? Whether it's OT, it's speech, it's, psych, whatever kind of, allied health you're going into or any kind of activity, if they're dysregulated, the likelihood that they're going to participate is pretty low.
yeah.
Um, And so do you just have like a range of activities that you do with them at home, or do you go in with like a preconceived idea of like what you're going to be working on, or is it more based around like pencil grip and like doing the pencil grip and fine motor skills, or it's a combination?
I think it's a bit of a combination because I like to
Yeah.
go in with like some of it a plan. Like, here's how I would like to meet this goal, or here's something that we could do that I feel like he would be interested in. And then that plan
Mhm.
could just be thrown out the window as soon as I walk in. Uh,
Yeah.
Something completely different, but we're still meeting those goals. And that's where I feel like OT is so unique, is we
Yes.
can be so creative
Yep.
with how we meet our goals with our
Hmm.
kids.
Hmm.
And I just feel like that's where our like special sauce is where we can be very creative with what we do with the children and meeting their unique interests and their unique needs. So I like
Yeah.
to have a plan just because that's my personality.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I am very flexible when I go in, and
Yep.
if they're interested in something that I have, great. If they're interested in a toy they've already been playing with, then I'll just hop in and join them in what they're doing.
Yep.
Um, I think for regulation purposes, I usually bring like a weighted ball, like 2 to 4
Hmm.
pounds, and we'll do some activities with that, if
Hmm.
they're into it. I usually bring like animal walk cards or yoga cards. I have different visuals of like a sensory obstacle course we could create and
Hmm.
let them build it, let them lead. But I have kind of those tools in the back of my pocket in case we need them.
Yeah, I love that. And so with the weighted ball, are you just getting them to like lift it around the room, or like pick it up, drop it down?
We are rolling it. We are playing bowling with it. We are tossing it to each other. If they have a
Yeah, right.
trampoline or like a bunch of cushions, we're playing hawk smash with it. We're throwing it down as hard as we can. I take it outside usually because that's safer.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
kids love it, and I don't know what it is about the weighted ball, but they just feel so strong, but they're also getting a ton of proprioceptive input, which is a
Yes.
calming system.
Yep.
And if we're starting with that, and then we do some more vestibular input, which is that movement with the swing or any sort of like upside down movement, and then we finish with the weighted ball, I think that's a great combination.
Yep.
Sometimes I roll the ball over their backs or have them roll it over their legs and over their arms. Um,
Yeah, right.
input too. So a weighted ball is like my special like little weapon in my bag.
Mental note, buy a weighted ball. I was actually thinking about getting a weighted
Yeah.
ball, but more for me than for
Oh,
anybody else.
even
But like
better.
I said, for exercise and doing my squats and stuff. But like maybe this is a
Yeah.
better way to
Well,
do
my
it.
weighted ball's like squishy a little bit, so it's like not like a hard stiff ball, but it's a little squishy and yeah, it's easy to pick up and all that fun stuff.
Maybe what we'll do is if you can give me a link to the ball, that maybe we can like list it, and hopefully we can get it over here. But if not, I'm sure we'll find
That
a
sounds good.
substitute. Um, so how long do you think that a child should have OT?
I think definitely depends on the kid,
Yep.
but I have a pretty strong stance on if we're not meeting goals or if we've met some goals and if I'm doing my part as educating the family on ways to continue to meet their growth and support them, I
Hmm.
think 6 to 12 months max.
6 to 12 months, really?
And then take a break. I would even say take a break after 6 months, take like 4 weeks off, see how they do, and then continue on if you think it's absolutely needed, and sometimes it is. Like I said, this is very dependent on the child. I think there's some
Of
very
course.
cases where 12 months, we definitely need to continue.
Yep.
Um, but if we're talking about providing strategies in the home for regulation, we're talking about
Hmm.
motor development and supporting that. I don't see a need going beyond 6 months if we're doing all the education, if I'm providing what I need to provide for the family and give
Hmm.
tools and strategies that I know, because that's my job is to, like, work myself out of a job. Like,
Okay, so I can like actually hear every parent who's listening to this going, "I'll just scoop my jaw off the floor right now." It's just not. That's not what I've seen over here, right? I
yeah,
feel like as parents, we get into finding a therapist, and then that continues on and on and on and
I know.
on. And I personally, and I've said this to a lot of clients, I've said it to a lot of friends. For me, a therapist has a life cycle, right? And it gets to a point where however long that might be. For us, it was longer, maybe like more like 2 years, where it would almost be that my son and the therapist had gotten to the end point and he or she couldn't teach him anymore.
Yep.
And that we needed a new, fresh set of eyes. We needed
Yeah.
fresh energy. We needed like a whole different bunch of strategies. And I think it's really important that we tell parents that it's okay to change therapists. Like, you don't feel like you need to stay with someone
Yep.
because, for whatever reason, that you feel bad that you're going to take away business, because I'm pretty sure they'll have a waiting list. I don't know about over there, but there are long wait lists over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there long wait lists over there?
There are, and we see that here too. We see kids in therapy from, when they're diagnosed until they're 18, and I'm like, oof. We
Yeah.
all get kind of burnout, we all kind of plateau. The therapist runs out of ideas, and the
Yeah.
child is no longer motivated. And if they're not internally motivated, we're not going to really make progress. Um,
Yes.
and I think too, I think sometimes, not all the time, I think sometimes parents are like more dependent. Like, if I'm not doing OT, they're not getting better, you know? Where I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that's true. I think that the parents have a lot of skills and a lot of education when they're in therapy with their child, that they're capable of providing that same support at home once they've been in therapy for a while and learn those tools.
Yeah.
So
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. And it's it is important to empower parents, right? It's so
mhm,
important for the parent to be in that session with that child so that they can model it outside of those hours, because and this may not be a very popular opinion, but the idea that you're going to take your child to a 45-minute hour session of OT and claim that everything's going to be a-okay, it's not. Like, I know, granted, hand on my heart, I was stressed that, there was definitely times where I felt like I couldn't do the homework, and there were plenty
yeah,
of times where I would rock up at the OT and I'm like, I didn't do the homework, we didn't work on anything, I was really sad and I just cried all week, and that's what happened.
yeah,
And I have yet to meet an OT that's going to turn around and say, well, that's it, you're out, we're not working with you anymore. So just having some grace for yourself, but it's also important to be able to model that, if you get the chance.
yeah. And I
um
think if you have a really good therapist, they're going to meet the child, but they're also going to meet where the parents are at. And they're not going to provide you a ton of homework if the parent is overwhelmed. And we should have that therapeutic use of self to know that,
yeah.
and to shift gears maybe a little bit if that's what's happening. So,
Yes. Yeah, definitely. um so what are the areas of need that OTs can address with children and their families? Like, are there any like pillars that you would go by, or are there any areas that are the most important when it comes to OT?
um, I think independence is our biggest key when it comes to my goals for children, is to make them
Hmm.
as independent as possible, doing things that are meaningful to them. That can be
Hmm.
different for everyone. They might not
Yep.
be really into taking a bath, and that's not what they want to do
Yep.
yet.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I've had
We
lots of
can be
PDAs.
dressing, and we can be independent with making a snack,
Yep.
and if we can be independent with writing our name and
Yes.
doing schoolwork,
Yep.
those are things that we like to work on. So I think independence, building
Yes.
confidence, understanding sensory needs and sensory systems, that will be ever changing for a child. For every person, your sensory system is always changing, but knowing those body cues, um, and yeah, just being a
They're the
confident
main.
person, that's my
Yeah.
goal.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you, because if you're confident and you have independent living skills, the likelihood of you being able to take on anything else is going to be far easier than if you are struggling to just be able to cook a meal or go to the supermarket, or, do those basic functions. And I think that's really important to start when they're young, right? To start when they, and small things, like, it's not, no one's asking you to have like a list of 50 things and be like, okay, Bobby, go off you go off to the supermarket and get those things. It's all about just starting small and just
Yeah,
getting familiar with that stuff.
for sure.
um and so what does a typical OT session look like for you?
Um, I do for in-home, I come in and I kind of see what they're doing, where they're at.
Hmm.
We'll do an obstacle course. I'll involve some sort of fine motor activity in that.
Yep.
Um, we or probably maybe if that's a goal, we maybe sit it at the table for, like, 5 to 10 minutes of the entire, like, hour session, 'cause I think that we could
Mhm.
work off the table with fine motor skills, we don't have to be seated.
Yep.
Um, and sometimes I like to do a craft, or we make something at the end, do some sort of, like, executive functioning task like that.
Mhm.
And a lot of it is parent coaching.
Mm. Mhm. And by
So
parent coaching, you mean that you're coaching the parent on what to do?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm coaching them. I'm like, here's why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Here's the reason behind this. Here's how
Mhm.
you can incorporate this tomorrow or
Yeah.
in your daily routine and
Mhm.
just providing strategies that way.
Yeah, definitely. Because, like I said before, I think that parents can get really overwhelmed because they don't know. Like, no one gives you a handbook, right? And says this is
Yeah.
the way that it's going to look. And so, having someone tell you the reason why they're doing it, I think, is so important. And not just the do this. When Bobby's having a
Mhm.
meltdown, just do this. This will work. Well, but why are we doing this? And how else can it be interacted with in other situations?
Yep.
Um, and what products do you often recommend for families when they are raising an autistic child?
A weighted ball.
A weighted ball. Yeah, I am totally on this weighted ball. Don't you
um,
worry.
Sometimes I think a crash pad is necessary, not always. I think it's a big plus, not a huge need, but a crash pad, sometimes a body sock we use a lot. Um, a swing if you can. There's a lot of different kinds of swings you can do. A doorway swing or something that you could attach to the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those are like my big ones, I would say. It's definitely
Yep.
very dependent on the child. Finding them like a calming space that they could go to maybe in their home, like maybe that's needed for them. If they're really overwhelmed, really sensitive to sensory input, maybe we build them like their own little calm corner in their home. Um, and we can provide like different tools in that. But yeah, it's really just any sort of way we can incorporate some like sensory friendly activities in their own
Yep.
environment would be ideal.
Yeah, right. And so, do you find that the toys that you recommend at home, once a child turns school age, that they're or kinder age, that they're able to take in those resources into either school or kinder and have that as a regulation tool?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
So I know for me, like I'm in the school system now, and there's a lot of those same tools that I just talked about in the classrooms or in a classroom that they can go to and like, hey, I need a swing break, or hey, I just need
Really?
to like lay on a crash pad and just chill for a second, or I need a weighted lap animal during a test because I'm anxious and this is
Mm-hmm.
stressful and that helps me. I've handed out little like tactile strips with like the figure eight to like breathe in and breathe out.
Yep.
I've handed out like little squishy balls that they can play with while they're testing, and there's like sensory walks in the hallway that they can do of little obstacle course.
Wow.
Yeah, I feel like the
Well,
schools do a really job of like accommodating sensory needs. I
yeah,
feel like it's
right.
a big um, need and a big area of knowledge for a lot of teachers and therapists. So I think
And would
they're
you
doing.
say that a lot of sorry, beg your pardon. So go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was done.
What would you say that a lot of teachers, especially over there, have a good understanding of what regulation looks like in autistic children?
I think we're doing a better job of educating. I think it's
Yeah.
starting to become more of a area that's known for teachers. I don't know if they're
Mhm.
necessarily like equipped with all the strategies, but I think they know who to go to. I think they know what
Mhm.
questions to ask, and I think they can recognize when a child is dysregulated. And I think that's the first step is
Yeah.
to recognize those cues. And then I think they're doing a better job of accommodating those needs.
Yeah, I love that. I do think that teachers need a lot more education over here. But you can't, there's no way I would ever blame a teacher for that because they're just not really taught in tertiary, right? They're not taught in university that this is what dysregulation looks like. And I think the fact is that they're not taught a lot about neurodivergence.
Yeah,
So a lot of it's based around neurotypical children. And so when you get come into a classroom and there's maybe like a quarter to half of the children have some sort of neurodivergence, it's really tough on the teacher to then
yeah,
figure out, well, how do I best support this class and what does that look like?
yeah.
So yeah, and I think that education piece is so so important.
Yeah. I mean, it's
um
hard to know if they're not seeking it out, that education, it's hard
yeah,
to know. And I think
yeah,
it's definitely needed. I mean,
yeah,
we have the increased rate in autism and a bunch of other disabilities. So I feel like teachers are wanting to get more education about it. So
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I love that. I love that. Okay. So before we go on, you have a glorious freebie that you sent my way that you are happy to share with our community. Can you please tell us what it is?
a freebie, I can send
Yes.
you any freebie you want.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Did you send
um,
me?
the fine motor one.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna have to go back to
I know, I forget
my
which one I sent you now. There's
see
so
what
many.
happens.
I
Let me
know.
have a quick look. It was um the creating a calm space in the home.
Oh yeah, and I even talked about that. So provided I provide a bunch of different products under each sensory system
Mm-hmm.
that would meet their needs. And I usually suggest one product from each sensory system to build
Yep.
their corner.
Yes.
You can call it a calm corner, you can call it like a charge up station, you can call it a sensory safe space. Anywhere
Mm-hmm.
you want to just kind of take a breath,
Yeah.
recharge their batteries. Maybe you're in there with them, co-regulating,
Mm-hmm.
doing one or two of the activities, and then going back to whatever it is that they were doing.
Yeah.
So giving them a space to like meet their needs, and just kind of take a breath if you ever need one. And yeah, there's some product recommendations in there, how to use it, when to use it, all that good stuff.
Okay. And so this is to create a safe space in the home. So is that something that is I'm just thinking in my mind, like, would you use that for someone who obviously is quite young, but would you use that for a teenager as well? Or is that like not appropriate for that age group?
I think it depends.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think they could definitely benefit from it. I think if it's something that they're willing to maybe build themselves and hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I need. And this is my little space that I go to when I need to recharge my batteries. I mean,
Yep.
I go into my bedroom and I turn off the lights and hide under the sheets for like 5 minutes when I'm feeling overwhelmed. So
Yep.
that is my safe
Yep.
space.
Yeah, I am. Mine's the bath, so I totally get it.
Yeah.
Yep.
We all have it, like adults, like
Yep.
we adjust, like we all have these things that we do to regulate our nervous system. We don't call it like I'm going to my safe space or I'm going to go get my sensory needs met. No, like we just do it, and
Yep.
kids need that support in order to know when they need to meet their needs. So
And I think also, I was having a chat just last week with a lovely lady, and we were talking about how it's important to model off what you're doing. So,
yeah,
like a good way, especially if you've got a child who's younger, who and you're still in the midst of the journey of autism, you might not when you're actually dysregulated, but you might make it a point of saying to your child when they're regulated, oh, I'm just so angry and I just need a breath and I just need to take some time out, even though you're obviously not dysregulated. And you will go into that space so that you can model what it looks like for your child so that they know, oh, okay, when I'm feeling like this, I need to go here and this is what it's going to be. And I think that that is such an important role to, especially if your child is non-speaking, to be able to model that so
yeah,
that they can understand what's going on and the reason why, and then coming out and be like, oh, I feel so much better now that I went in there and I took some breaths and I did, whatever you were going to do.
right,
Kids need modeling. They need it all the time. And it's not just like a one-hit wonder and you're going to do it once and then it's done.
yeah.
You need to be able to do it consistently so they can understand what is the reason for why that's happening. So I think that's great. So where can people find that freebie?
It is on my website, but I can also send you a link, and I can link it on my social media, on my stories, and send it to you.
Yeah. If you
But
just
yeah,
pop me through the link, I will add it to, I'll tag you in there as well so
okay.
that people can go to your website and download it because it's definitely a great guide. It is well worth the time to go through it. So just so when people can find you on socials, what are you under?
Confident Kids Therapy, and I'm mainly on Instagram. And then I am on Facebook, and then I also have a website, confidentkidstherapy.com.
Excellent. Okay. Now we are ready for rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
Don't worry, you won't be solving the world's crisis. That's okay.
Oh man, I
Um,
was ready for that one. I know what to do.
I'm glad one of us does. Okay, what's one thing you wish you knew when you first started as an OT?
Mm, that I don't need to know it all.
Oh,
And
say
I
it
had
again for the people at the
so
back.
much pressure on myself as a new grad that I had
Mhm.
to be an expert in feeding and in sensory and in EI. And then I had to know somewhat about adults in case I ever wanted to go over there. And then it's just like OTs have so much area to cover.
Mhm.
You can either like know a little bit in every area, or we
Yeah.
can really just focus on like one or two areas and be really good at that. And so I
Yes.
feel like I wish I would have known that sooner and just dove right in to something very specific. I still feel like I'm kind of a Swiss Army knife, but I have developed somewhat of an expertise in fine motor and sensory, so that's what I'm sticking with.
Yeah, I love that. And as parents, we feel the same way, right? We feel
Yeah,
like we need to be an expert around everything and you want to know all the information straight away. But the
yeah,
reality is, it takes time, not only for you to get through your trauma and your grief and your sadness and whatever else comes up, but also to be able to just learn from your child. You know,
yeah,
I look back at my son when he was 2 and I look at my son now that he's 10. We're not talking apples with apples, right? Like he's developed so much over that time, and I've gotten to know him and his triggers and his sensitivities and all the stuff. And it's the same. It's the same with everyone. So I love that. Um, how do you explain autism to people if they are unfamiliar with the term?
I think autism is just we have a different brain. Everyone has a different brain, and it just works a
Mm-hmm.
little bit differently. And if I'm explaining it to a parent or if I'm explaining it to a child, I'd be like, he might have unique interests and he might be really smart in one area, and he
Yeah.
also has a hard time talking to others, but
Mm-hmm.
we can all still love each other and include them and do our best to meet their needs. But we're all just built a little differently, and that's okay.
Yes. No, I love that. What's your favorite motto or saying or a quote?
Ooh, it's this is a new one I'm trying to say to myself and my
Do
daughter.
it.
It's not hard, it's new.
Oh, drop the mic. Yes. I feel like that all the time.
And I need to
Yes.
remind myself, I had to remind myself that today. I need to remind my daughter that when she's learning to read, like it's not hard, it's just new.
It
And
is.
it's so helpful.
It is. It is. And it can be, and you can be overwhelming. So it's not, and so we just need to be like, well, it's not hard. We just sort of take the overwhelm out of it and just look at it. I love that. I love that. I am totally going to put that on a post-it note and put it on my screen. Um, what's one of your favorite success stories as an OT?
Oh man, I feel like I have quite a few. I feel like this one's unique. We haven't talked a ton
Mm,
about this. I was a student, so I wasn't a graduate therapist yet, but I was working at a local clinic,
mhm,
and a child that we were working with did not have function of his arms or his legs, but he really wanted to play cards with his friends without his mom.
mm,
You know, we're 12 years old. We don't need our mom to play our cards for us, right? And so, a lot of what OTs do with our creative side is we use adaptive equipment.
mhm.
We get creative with how to build things to make it useful for our client. And I made him this little reacher that he was able to use with his mouth, and
Oh,
it was a had a mouthpiece on it attached to a like dot, like a stick that
mhm.
opened up a clothespin.
Yes.
He was able to pick up a card on a magnet board and place the card into the middle, and he was able to pick up a card and then put it back on his magnet board using his mouth. So
Wow. That is
that was a fun one. Right?
amazing.
I was like, I'm in the right profession, I think.
You are, you so are. You so are.
So that was
Um,
one of my big wins. But I'm sure I have like other stories too, like recent ones. But that one has just always stuck out to me.
Oh my gosh. That's oh yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And it is. And I've always said this, and I know I'm sure I've said this so many times on the podcast. We must presume competence, right? We must
Yeah.
presume that they can do it. That
Yes.
idea that you think that they, oh well, Bobby can't speak, so you know he's never gonna speak. No. Bobby, even though Bobby may not speak, Bobby can understand what's going on. So don't be bad mouthing Bobby in the front of him, right? So like let's just make sure that we're really taking that into consideration. Um, and the last one, lucky last, how do you find gratitude in your life?
I find gratitude in my life just, I think, through my children. Like, I'm so thankful to be a mom, to be able to, like, make myself a better parent, because I feel like that's my greatest joy and greatest gift and job in my life, is to just parent really kind and great humans. So that's what I'm here to do, and I'm grateful to have that job.
And it's a tough job at that, but we do it, right?
Don't an hour ago I did not think that, because I was going through it during bath time. We were going through it.
We all the parents are nodding their heads now.
Grateful.
The parents are nodding their heads and saying, yes, we've had those times. Don't worry. Okay, just a quick, again, where can people find you?
Confident Kids Therapy, and my name is Calli.
Calli, and it's all on, mostly on Instagram, and the website is
confidentkidstherapy.com.
Perfect. And so I will link to the freebie, but I will also grab the link from Calli around the ball, and we will pop that on socials so that everyone can have a look and see. Hopefully we can source one over here. So it'll be good.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you so much for your time, Calli.
Thank you.
Bye.